Good afternoon. This is Vijay Khetarpal here, and hope you are doing well, and so is your family and near and dear ones. Thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar this afternoon, and good morning to those of you on the West Coast. Good evening if you're overseas. I wanted to take the time to chat with all of you given the election season, and I will go through some comments. And as I go through that, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box, and I will address that towards the end. There will be time for questions and answers. If you have further questions or concerns regarding your personal situation, I suggest we make a Zoom or in-office appointment to discuss that. So with that, let me start with this slides, and we'll go through that. So first and foremost, I'm required to give you these industry disclosures regarding the fact that past performance is no guarantee of future results, and regarding tax strategies, to talk to your tax and legal advisors and the entity that we rely on for giving us research and other support, independent of my firm, Integrity Financial Group. So first and foremost, let me tell you what this is not. This is not a prediction webinar on the likely results of the upcoming US election, which continues to remain razor close. It is a webinar on the predictability of certain outcomes, dependent to some extent on the outcome of the election. We try to focus here not on the narrative, but on the data that I will share with you. This discussion should enable you to plan for the future with your financial advisors to enable an optimized strategy for you rather than be blinded by the noise, which oftentimes is either fake news or at least misguided with the political advertisements in the election season. In summary, things are never as bad as they seem, nor as good as they seem. The truth lies somewhere in the middle and may impact each one of us differently. Either way, I hope you vote, because not many on the planet have the privilege to even vote. We're going to focus on several aspects that people have asked me in the last couple of months. For example, we're going to take a look at the broad markets, particularly the question, is it time to take some chips off the table? We're going to look at inflation and interest rates, income tax expectations, ramifications for healthcare, adjustments to retirement plans, impact of geopolitics, is there validity to the climate change argument, current levels of US debt unsustainable or sustainable, and finally, the political outcome, do they really matter? So let me start by sharing with you one of the slides, which is concerning the debt levels. So you can see here, people talk about the credit market debt of the United States, which exceeds $15 trillion. Despite this high level of debt, we have seen markets perform very well this year. Actually, this has been the best year for presidential election year in the last 90 years for the market. But then when you stack that up against the non-financial corporate assets, which have grown even faster than the debt, this just goes to show that companies in America are making healthy profits. You can see on this screen, the profitability of American companies is significant, and this actually excludes banks. Banks are a very profitable business, unusually profitable. They have a different setup, so we exclude that here. The cost of servicing this debt currently is less than 2.5% of the GDP. So when you think about it, you cannot look at debt in absolute terms. We have to look at it relative to assets relative to profitability. And therefore, even though the debt levels seem high, the servicing of that debt by the government is actually well below historical highs of the 1980s and 1990s. Let's look at climate change. A lot of people talk about, we've had these hurricanes in Florida in the last couple of months. On average, we have these hurricanes that about two a year. But the main issue is how much of these are major hurricanes. If you think of it that way, the major hurricane landfalls average just under one a year, even though we had two this year. So we got to put it in the context and then see how that converts to data. And global climate-related death risk has actually been declining pretty steadily, and it's the lowest it's ever been. A lot of people talk about global warming. It is true. However, if you think about how many people die from the cold, it actually exceeds deaths through excessive heat. And America is among the cleanest of all nations in the world over the years. You look at the chart on the left, it shows the pollutants from India and China in particular, and America is on the far right, is much cleaner. As a consequence of that, we are actually in many ways ahead of the rest of the world in addressing the climate crisis. Further, share of world population living in extreme poverty is declining. And this means that people are more prosperous, and prosperous people live longer and spend more. So let me stop here and see if there are any questions in the comments box. Please post your question in the comment box. All right. So if there are no questions, the question is, the question should be, what are the takeaways for planning purposes? And I like to suggest that you think of it in the following terms, that you want to recognize that no matter who wins the election, that there will be some changes. Those changes will be primarily in the relationship to income and estate taxes. Second, there will be changes with respect to opportunities to invest in. For example, if the Republicans sweep both the House and the Senate and the House, you can expect generally a lower tax burden, but a higher debt burden. On the other hand, if the Democrats sweep the House, the Senate, and the White House, then you can expect more focus on a middle class tax cut, but with a somewhat higher burden on people earning over $400,000 a year. So from a planning perspective, you have one more year for tax regions to take advantage of the current tax laws, because generally the current tax rates are among the lowest they have been for income taxes as well as estate taxes. Next option is, as far as taking some chips off the table from the market. If you are in retirement, or if you are close to retirement, I would say it makes sense to take some chips off the table, given the fact that the market is at an all-time high. On the other hand, for investments that are needed, let's say 3-5 years down the line or longer, you should continue to remain invested. The other question that I got here is regarding whether one should invest in cryptocurrency. I would generally say that it's very volatile. You want to focus on companies that have crypto holdings. You might want to focus on certain funds and ETFs that have positions in crypto. But by and large, I don't think direct investing in crypto is suitable for the vast majority of our clients, at least not of any significant consequence. But if you do invest in crypto, 2 to 4% is probably adequate, because if it does really well, that should be enough. If it doesn't do well, I think you can make that up with other investments. Also, if you're using other companies as a proxy for crypto, you can find that if those companies have a bad, shall I say, bad experience with crypto, because the companies are doing well otherwise with their primary lines of business, you should be largely protected from significant loss. And on the other hand, if it does well, those companies will continue to blossom. So I do think there's a place for crypto for certain clients who have a high risk tolerance, but we generally advise against direct crypto. I've also had the question come up regarding debt. I would answer it this way. There is a value to debt. There is reductive debt and there is productive debt. Reductive debt would be, let's say, credit card debt or money you borrow to, let's say, take a vacation. That is what is considered reductive debt. Productive debt, on the other hand, is borrowing for, let's say, buying a home or an investment property, or perhaps a business where you see significant opportunity for growth. Generally speaking, interest rates on debt are mirrored to the treasury, the 10-year treasury bill. So if you think that you can either in real estate or business or even in the equity markets earn 4 or 5% more than that, sometimes we can make an argument that that is productive debt. So investors, particularly billionaires, understand very well the value of debt. They understand the tax code, and they understand that each pot of money has a different objective. So I think every dollar that you have, give it a job, make sure it does the job very well. I also had a question here on gold, whether it's appropriate to buy gold in today's times. And the way I would answer that is gold, historically at least, has been a store of value, but it has not necessarily been a growth of value. A good example would be if in the Roman times you were to buy a suit, a belt, and a pair of shoes, it would cost you the equivalent of 1 gold coin, a 1 ounce gold coin. Today, if you go and buy a new suit, pair of shoes, and a belt, it'll cost you about what you would pay for 1 ounce of gold. So gold is a store of value, not necessarily a growth of value. In addition, I've had questions relating to retirement planning as to whether we should have contributions made to pre-tax accounts or post-tax, like a Roth account. And I would say if you're in an income tax bracket of 30% or higher, I would suggest that you, at this time, suspend further contributions to pre-tax accounts if you already have a significant position in pre-tax accounts. And the reason is you're really postponing and magnifying a problem, because we expect tax rates to be higher starting in 2026. You may not feel it till 2027, but we do expect it to be higher starting in 2026. If you have not had any contribution to retirement plans and you have a long-term horizon, I suggest you consider a split. Put half the money in Roth accounts and the other half in pre-tax. Another question I have here is regarding whether we should use business S corporations or C corporations. My general recommendation is that if in fact you have a highly profitable business, typically defined as $1 million or more, then I would suggest you consider a split of S corporation for your primary operations and C corporation for your supporting operations of the business. And the reason for that is that the S corporation highest tax bracket as a flow-through entity is about 37% at the federal level. But the highest tax bracket at the C corporation level is 21%. That's a 16% differential, $160,000 per million. If you want more information, you can certainly reach out to me, and I'm happy to send you more information on that. I've also had questions on whether, from a retirement perspective, it makes sense to have a guaranteed lifetime income, or it makes better sense to have investment in the equity markets. And the answer is, we all know our date of birth, but none of us know our date of death. However, if you're age 65 or thereabout, you got to plan for about a 30-year retirement, especially if you're married. Assuming you take all the risks off the table, such as the high cost of long-term nursing care, and you make a provision for any medical expenses during your lifetime, I could argue that you could leave money invested in the market to the extent it is your discretionary spending. But for your fixed expenses, after you subtract your Social Security benefits, if there is a delta difference between the two, I would suggest you'll be better served by considering a lifetime income benefit rider using perhaps an annuity chassis. And there are many different types of annuities today, and I think you have to take a look at that if you've never considered it. I am now going to show you a slide, one very popular strategy in connection with this. You should be able to see this on the screen, and you can answer the question best to yourself, whether you would prefer to be an investor using the red line there, or whether you would prefer to be an investor using the blue line there. You can see over a long period of time, they pretty much end up in the same spot, but one of them is more volatile than the others. So the red line represents the S&P 500, which is a proxy for the broad markets, whereas the blue line represents indexed annuities with full 100% downside protection. So at this point, I'd like to start and see if any one of you have any questions. I don't see any other questions in the chat box. But if there are no further questions, I'm going to give you some of the time back to you. If you would like to take advantage of some of our sources for information, I can either send that to you separately, or I can send you a link, which I can put in the chat box, and you can then, let me see if I can do that here. I'm sorry, I cannot put that in the chat box. Maybe there's some industry regulation limiting that. But if you would like, just send me an email or give us a call, and I will be happy to send you that information. Final call for any questions. All right. I don't see any questions. Stay blessed. For those of you who celebrate the occasion of Diwali, happy Diwali to you, coming up in a couple of weeks. And I look forward to talking to each one of you in due course. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.